So my persuasive, okay, cool. My persuasive speech is whether or not Ultimate should be an NCAA sport. So let me take you through some of the history of some sports that we currently enjoy in college sports. So it's November 6, 1869, and you're on the campus of Rutgers University. And what you're witnessing is a bunch of men who are running towards each other, carrying an object that you've never seen before. But what you're witnessing is the first ever football game between Rutgers University and Princeton. So we fast forward the time to around November 22nd, 1877. This time you're witnessing a bunch of men carrying around sticks, and there happens to be a basket on the end of the sticks, and they're throwing around a ball, which is a more familiar object. But what you're witnessing now is the first ever collegiate lacrosse game between NYU and Manhattan College. There's a common factor between the last two scenarios I just mentioned. They are lacrosse and football being the two most, well, two of the two most popular collegiate sports that we enjoy today. So we fast forward 103 years later to November 6, 1972, to the same exact site at Rutgers University, the same exact field. You're witnessing a bunch of men who are throwing around a Frisbee, and the first ever collegiate Frisbee game was ever played between the same two teams, Rutgers and Princeton. So, with football and lacrosse being NCAA sanctioned sports, Ultimate still remains under the radar. With smaller sports such as fencing, squash, rowing, and water polo sanctioned, why should an Ultimate? It involves running, it involves conditioning, and athletes train for it every year. USA Ultimate governs over 700 plus teams and over 1,200 collegiate athletes play Ultimate Frisbee. However, none of these athletes are actually for the school. All of these athletes are students who just play on club teams that the school gives money to sometimes. Increasing students getting scholarships is one of the main reasons why the NCAA has sports. Even though football and basketball are mainstream sports that generate a lot of revenue for the school, other sports such as women's sports and smaller sports such as tennis, golf, and I don't mean to be degrading towards women's sports, but it just happens to be that men's football and basketball gain the most revenue for schools. And because these smaller sports or less popular sports are still in schools, this is because they want to promote scholarships and giving people an education. And this leads to my next point, which scholarships provide higher education for thousands of students each year. The NCAA studies show that student athletes enjoy high levels of engagement in academics, athletics, and community, have positive feelings about their overall athletics and academic experiences, attribute learning invaluable life skills to being a student athlete, and are more likely to earn similar higher wages than non-collegiate student athletes. And this is from the NCAA.org itself. And the motto for the NCAA is that there's a commercial that airs every time it says, most of us will go pro in other than sports. We can look aside Torrey Smith and Jordan Williams, as recently as yesterday, who decided to go to the NBA to make the big bucks. But the majority of track athletes and other students who are athletes in other sports don't make the millions of dollars that they do and graduate in 4 years. College championships can fund other sports. As I said before, football and men's basketball fund millions of dollars to institutions all across the country. And there's a larger pool of revenue that can provide more scholarships for other sports. 60% of the NCAA expenses in 2008, 2009, that's $390 million, was distributed evenly to Division I member conferences based on formulas approved by the Division I membership. About 13% supported 88 national championships in 23 sports in Divisions 1, 2, and 3. And that's another statistic from NCAA.org. And since Ultimate is a growing sport, why shouldn't it be a college sport? We have tons of students who are playing a sport that's growing in the last 40 years, and it's still not recognized by a lot of schools. Since high school teams are growing across the country, recruiting is not going to be a huge issue since a lot of schools are looking to play club Ultimate in college anyway. Excuse me. And because Ultimate is growing in high school, also in college, that it's growing as a sport in general. When I was in high school, I used to see a bunch of kids throwing around a Frisbee, and I didn't want to play the sport at all because I didn't think it was a sport. And the saying, don't knock it until you try it, was very true for me because when I ended up playing it, I ended up loving it. And other sports such as badminton or squash or something like that, we could say the same thing, but they happen to be collegiate sports. So I want you to reconsider what you think about ultimate frisbee and think about whether or not it should be an NCAA sport. A growing number of international players are playing, and with over like 42 different countries involved, the World Fine Disc Federation funds this. And this could potentially be an Olympic sport one day. And if it's an Olympic sport, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be an NCAA sport, but with a growing number of players across the world, you can recruit internationally as well as domestically. Whether or not the sport becomes a college sport or an Olympic sport, it doesn't matter because eventually the number of players will ultimately grow. I used the same word. I didn't mean to do that. But in the end, the sport will grow exponentially, and players will still be joining this new sport for years to come. And whether or not it becomes a college sport or an Olympic sport, like I said, it won't stop the growth.